morning. Wow. I'm going to make sure I don't trip. Before we start, I just want to take one moment to introduce somebody else that's not and yet is on stage here with me. There's going to be drawing in the back, and it's not a movie. It's actually my dear friend Claudia Lopez in the back there, and she will be drawing while I'm talking. So I want to share a quote with you, a quote that I came across on the internet a while back. It's from the Presencing Institute at MIT, and the quote said, "We live in a moment of profound disruption in which we collectively create results that nobody wants." I was immediately intrigued. I mean, change is my passion. It's my drug. I've been working in innovation for 10 years now. And if you say disruption, you got my attention. So I read the quote a few times, and I realized it said something or it illustrated something that I had seen with my clients over and over again. Everybody wants to be disruptive. Everybody wants that moonshot idea. The sky is the limit. But then we try to squeeze it and we say, okay, sky is the limit, but it needs to pass our risk assessment, be economically feasible within our current business model, and comply with legal, obviously. So yes, we dream big, but then we squeeze it into our current framework. And the problem is that it almost always leads to optimization of what's already there. It doesn't really change anything. And in our moment of profound disruption, as the quote said, that's just not good enough anymore. We're not going to change the world by tinkering here and there. No, I believe we need a different kind of innovation. The kind that creates results we all want. But before we can go there, we need to understand a little bit better what are those challenges we're creating? What are those results that nobody wants? Here's how I look at it. We're in California, so some of you might know a thing or two about surfing and waves, right? Or maybe it's a cliche. Think of all of us as surfers, and collectively, we've been riding this great wave of progress for a long time now. Oh, it has been good. It has gained us so much. But the wave is at its tipping point, because in getting where we are today, we created a lot of challenges for ourselves, and they are starting to catch up with us. Just think about how economic growth is slowing down almost everywhere. Income inequality is rising. Technology and robotics are replacing our jobs faster than we can create new ones. And on the health side, according to the latest WHO data, more people die of obesity than of underweight these days. What is happening to our great wave of progress? And on the risk of being a total buzzkill here, it's not all. It's not only our economy and our health that is being challenged. Our environment took a really big hit too. Severe air, water, and soil pollution, deforestation, rising water scarcity, overall resource depletion, and an ever-growing mountain of waste, just to name a few. In 2050, there will actually be more plastic than fish in the ocean if we keep this up. So yes, I'd say we are indeed collectively creating results that nobody wants. Our wave is at its tipping point, and we urgently need to change that. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, lots of nodding. But how do we do that? How do we turn this around? I believe we need a different kind of innovation, because our current kind is clearly not preventing our wave from crashing, or at least not fast enough. I believe we need a kind of innovation that actually changes the course we're on, that is highly creative and profound, the kind that goes beyond our current logic and what we think is reasonable today. Because anything reasonable just builds on what we already know, on what's already there. It just adds to tipping the wave. I believe it's time for unreasonable innovation. Unreasonable innovation is innovation that is based on 3 key principles that actually allow it to have a positive impact to create results we all want. First of all, it tackles the core of one of those challenges we're creating. It doesn't just patch up the symptoms, it tackles the very core of it. Secondly, it is sustainable. It is sustainable for ourselves, for the others around us, and for our environment. So it is sustainable on all three levels. And last but not least, it creates opportunity. Opportunity for something new, something better, because it pushes us out of our existing framework. It is highly creative. The goal of unreasonable innovation is to use that disruption we're in to actually create results we all want. I know this is quite abstract and theoretical, so let's make it more tangible, shall we? I want you to imagine all the electronic devices you own. Picture them in your head and count them. How many do you have? Now raise your hand if you have more than 4 devices. If you have more than 5, 6, 7-ish. Okay, so most people have around 5 devices, or at least the ones who raised their hand, definitely. On average in North America, we have between 5 and 7 devices per person, and that number is only set to rise in the future. That's a lot of electronics for one person. While I was preparing this part of the talk, I realized I have 3 laptops. Why do I need 3 laptops? I only have 2 hands, so. But what is the impact that we are creating here? What is the result that we are all together creating with all of our devices? First of all, resource depletion. To manufacture all of these devices we own, we constantly extract resources from the earth. But the problem is the supplies aren't infinite. And if we keep our current rate, the earth won't be able to support our current lifestyle anymore. In fact, if we're really honest with ourselves, it already doesn't support it anymore today. In 2015, we used 1.5 times the resources that the earth can provide in 1 year. That means we are massively borrowing from the future, with very little intent to give it back. Second impact is that, largely related to the first one, is that we are all contributing to the single fastest growing waste stream, electronic waste, or e-waste. All of our old devices, of all of them, only about 15 to 20% actually gets recycled. So that means that most of it ends up in landfills and dumping sites all over the world. Some more legal than others. But the problem is electronic waste is highly toxic. It contains heavy metals like lead, chromium, cadmium that can leak into the soil and cause severe environmental and health risks. So not only are we extracting more than we have available on the long run, we're also massively squandering it by throwing it away and polluting our environment and ourselves with it. So yes, those are definitely results that nobody wants, I would say. This is not what I wanted when I bought my 3 laptops, for sure. So how can we change this? Let's look at what would be the logical step to do here. The first step of innovation to solve these challenges. Recycling, right? And that's exactly what Apple started doing earlier this year when they introduced Liam. Some of you might have heard about it. Liam is a line of robots that can dismantle your old iPhone in 11 seconds and separate all of its valuable components for reuse and recycling. That's pretty neat, right? Apple reusing all of its own products to create new ones? But is it enough? Is it enough to tackle the core of both challenges we're facing? Unfortunately, it's not, or at least not yet. If Apple would scale Liam, they could definitely tackle the e-waste problem. We can agree on that. But the resource depletion is still an issue because their business model is still based on selling more products. So year after year, they need more resources to expand their product base. There is still a mismatch between what they would get back from recycling and what they need to sustain their yearly revenue growth. So yes, Liam is definitely a step in the right direction, but it is not unreasonable innovation yet. So can I challenge you to think beyond the logical step of recycling? Do we dare to explore what unreasonable innovation could look like for a company like Apple? Here's what I think it might look like. The major change would be that they would no longer be selling products. They would sell a service. And in Apple's case, I would say they sell superior connectivity. Sounds about right? As a customer, all of us, we would pay them a monthly fee to be connected to all our friends, our family, and all the online services we use. How we are connected is up to them to figure out. We wouldn't own the hardware anymore, but depending on my specific needs or your specific profile, they would give us the technology that guarantees our best connectivity service. So maybe I finally don't have to drag around those laptops anymore. Maybe I get a headset and everything I need lives in a virtual reality space. And instead of 5 devices, I only need 1. Who knows? In any case, Apple would have their recurring revenue and we would have our guaranteed connectivity. So who would still need a yearly new phone with minor updates? It would be in Apple's best interest to actually make devices that last longer and only replace them when they come up with something that really improves our connectivity service, instead of convincing us to buy a new device. So if they do come up with something new, they could take back all of their old devices, put our friend Liam to work, and actually reuse the materials. So if Apple would adopt an unreasonable innovation model like this, they would actually be tackling the core of the challenge. They would, because their business model is no longer based on selling more products. They could actually strongly limit the amount of resources they need. So the first key principle of unreasonable innovation, check. Secondly, would it be sustainable, this kind of model? Apple would have their guaranteed revenue, or their recurring revenue, and they would be in full control of pricing and supply of the resources they need, because they're recycling them. We would all have our guaranteed connectivity, and together we are strongly eliminating e-waste and resource depletion. So yeah, I think it could be sustainable. And last but not least, does it create opportunity for something new? Apple could focus on unreasonable innovation of their service instead of minor innovation of their products. They could actually explore how to improve and expand our connectivity. What would be the next generation of connectivity? Because this kind of innovation would push them out of their product-minded framework. So if the logical step of recycling is having your cake, then unreasonable innovation is eating it too. I know I haven't touched on all the aspects of such a complex shift, but it does open up perspective, doesn't it? It makes me wonder what the world could look like if we explore unreasonable innovation together, if we aim to create results we all want. And I know it will be hard, I'm well aware of that, because unreasonable innovation can feel counterintuitive. It's hard and messy and slow, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. In fact, we've actually done it before. Just think about the 60s, when women collectively started to enter the workforce. Do you think that one day they just went, "Honey, I've been thinking, and I would like to go to work full-time"? And the husband looked up from his newspaper and he said, "Sure, baby, I'll help out with the cooking and the cleaning." We all know that's not how it happened. No, it required a massive shift in our values, in how we look at work, gender, family. It required an unreasonable innovation on so many levels. And 50 years later, the shift is still ongoing, isn't it? But we made it happen anyway. So yes, I believe we can do this again. We've collectively been riding this great wave of progress. Oh, it has been good. but we pushed the wave to its maximum on all levels. And it's not gaining us much more. In fact, on many levels, we're already on the ride down. And although these days many politicians seem to scream, "Whatever you do, don't panic, just stay on the wave. I will make it great again." Or not. The problem is that inevitably, waves do crash onto shore. So if we choose to stay on this current wave, we better prepare for the crash. But it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to end in a crash. It's not our only option. We can choose to jump waves. We've done it before. What would it look like if we embrace unreasonable innovation? What would it look like if we create a world without resource depletion or electronic waste? If companies like Apple would tackle the core of their model, what would that look like? If we dare to recognize the social, economical, and environmental challenges we're facing, and we dare to explore unreasonable innovation together, we can build a new wave. So let's find the courage and change that quote I shared with you in the beginning, so that in a few decades' time, we might look back at this moment and say, we lived in a moment of profound disruption in which we collectively chose to create results we all want. Thank you.